Well, top of the morning or evening, whatever it is to you gardeners and homesteaders. We hope everybody's having a fantastic day, and we're just so happy to be here with you. We hope you're having a great holiday season. Right now, Batavia and myself are planning our gardens for next year. We're getting our seeds started, our seeds in order, getting everything going, and we want to just give this opportunity, first of all, for you guys to hear the top 5 episodes from last year. So these are the episodes that you guys listened to the most, commented, and enjoyed on. So be sure to enjoy these. I'm excited to re-listen to them myself. And also, we have a couple of announcements. One is I am starting to do seed starting date profiles for people. So if that's something you're interested in and you want, we can do a seed starting profile for you. Just email me at sandybottomhomestead@gmail.com. And the first 10 people to do it are going to get a 50% off discount. And this will be geared for you in your area. So give me your state and your city that you live in, and we'll get you a customized seed starting schedule for you. Because what I've found out in the past couple of years is, in fact, I was starting my seeds way too late, and I wasn't taking proper precautions and using the seeds to the best of their ability to grow bigger, stronger plants and thrive more, rotate my crops out so I can get 3 to 4 season gardening out of it. Depending on where you are, you can get that 4th season. Little disclaimer there. But definitely reach out at sandybottomhomestead@gmail.com and we'll get one made for you. And also, we are proud to give you our sponsor, which is Planter app. And like I said, this is the time of year where we're going to be planting our gardens, and we will be using the Planter app. It is an amazing app, and it's grown so much over the years. It's amazing. But you can create profiles on it. You can make all your different gardens and layouts, and it's drag and drop interface. It has all the details you need for your plantings, for your plants, for your frost dates, your days to go out. It has everything you need, gives you pest controls, companion, combative plantings, it's got it all. I mean, it's something that I have really fallen in love with over the year, and I credit the success of my garden to this over the years. So definitely check it out. There's a link below that will get you a hefty discount on it. So please take advantage of that, because this is the season in which we're going to be starting our gardens and planting them. And we want you to take advantage of it so you can get off to a great start for the year. And it is available on Apple and Google. You can use it on your PC. You can use it on your tablet and your phone. So anywhere you are, you can use this app. So check it out. That's the Planter app, the PLANTER app. And make sure you use the link below to get your discount. And that was a mouthful, everybody. So without further ado, we're going to play these episodes. And just know we are planning our gardens just as hard as we can, because we are ready for the new year. And also New Batavia, if you know what I'm saying. But also the next gardening season. So everybody, as you listen to this, remember, we're going to learn to grow and grow for change. Alrighty, gardeners. Do you have a pot? Do you have some dirt? Do you have a plant? Well, then you can have a ready-made container garden. What a perfect way to expand your garden. Right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening. We are your hosts, Ben in Batavia, and you can find me gardening in the country.
And you'll find me gardening in the city. Get ready as we dig deep into this
wonderful world of gardening, where we learn to grow and grow for change. All right, Miss Batavia, I think it's time to upgrade the bell. Just so we know, we may need a replacement. I think you have worn out the ringing mechanism in it, so there's that.
I think we're fine. Hold on. Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, okay. We'll take it. All right, you know the deal. Real quick, if you want to be a patron and help support the show, links are down below in the description. We would love to have you, and it helps support the show, and you will get 2 extra episodes a month. And we are personally excited about our after show that we have created. So come check that out. And in the link below, shirts, cups, cubs. Yeah, we're not selling baby bears. Mugs, all that good stuff, 25% off, code BYG Spring. And now, back to the regularly scheduled program. So, container gardening. I know you love it, don't you?
I'm a big fan.
Big fan. Yeah. So, I have a love-hate relationship with it. An extreme love-hate relationship, but that's okay. And I know that we have had this show for a couple years now, and yet another subject that we haven't really tapped into is container gardening.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
I know why we haven't.
Why is that?
Because the the container gardening crew scares me, man. They are just like, they are a tight group. You know what I mean? They love it.
I mean, I've heard you say this before.
Yeah, so they don't scare me, but I respect the game. But how many containers are you running right now?
I can say last year I got up to 40 containers, varying in size, everything from like 1 gallon containers up to 20 gallons. So we'll see what this year brings. There's no plan to cut back significantly, and there isn't a plan to extend significantly either. So
you're just going to kind of stay status quo?
I mean, we'll see. There's some things that definitely I made notes of, mental or otherwise, that could have done better in a different type of container. So I'll make adjustments.
And this
similar
is
to my raised beds. My plan for containers is swimming around in my head. So
yeah. So as far as containers go, is a raised bed considered a container in your book?
Is a raised bed considered a container? I've heard this before. In my book, it's not considered a container.
Yeah, me either. I do have a caveat that we'll get into later, but I think that's just me trying to justify, which is okay. I can justify every once in a while, can't I? It's unbecoming of myself. But I'm running 1, 2, 3. I think 4 right now, but I am expanding this year. And I know that I've flopped a little bit and said like, I don't like containers, but I've found a good use for them, which kind of, in my mind, that's what spurred this conversation that we're about to have. So I think there's a definite benefit, and there's definite drawbacks to it as well. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Challenges, I'd say, is the way I describe it.
Challenges, limitations, you know, we can get in with all the synonyms we want, but in all reality, I mean, I think it's definitely not a win-win. And I think you have to consider a number of things, which we will discuss, about how well they're going to function inside of your garden, because your garden is different than my garden.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, if there is a statement to be made, container gardening puts people that some people otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to garden. It gives them an opportunity to garden.
For sure.
So I love it for that.
Yeah. And it's definitely a way to like dip your toes into the water too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's also, you know, kind of as a part of the container or the expansion series that we're in, you know, what is it now? 1,488 beds that I have. Like
1,483.
83. Okay. Why would you bother with containers when you have that growing space, right? And there are a couple of different reasons, but one of them is it allows me to expand with little work. I didn't say little investment, because there is investment there, but little work. Like I don't have to set up structures. I don't have to dig up things, right? They are not permanent. I can decide I'm not going to grow in any containers this year. Yeah. You know, and that's that. Whereas, you know, if I'm sitting in looking at my raised beds and I'm not growing in them, they're just kind of these structures that are sitting there empty, you know? So, yeah. I got a lot to say. I'm trying to pace myself. Last week, I had us on the fast forward. Like, I was like, get to the next topic, which you didn't know the next thing I wanted to talk about, because we don't really walk through it in that level of detail. So I'm trying to pace myself. Don't keep on looking at me.
So I'm laughing at two things. So one, let me address that comment first. So yeah, you were definitely like, if somebody didn't know you, they'd be like, damn, Batavia just did a bunch of meth before she came on, because it is out of her character to go that fast, which for the record, Batavia is not on meth, but that's just a different story. And then second, I laugh because we have recently picked up a lot of followers. So thank you to and listeners. So everybody who's new, thank you. But when we said, Batavia's got 1,483 beds, you like how I remember that number. I have to say that that is not an accurate number, because we get comments and they're like, what in the hell is going on with Batavia's garden? How much does she really have? So yeah, you'll just have to find out. But we're not going to, we always, it's a running joke on the show from day one of Batavia's magnificent entrance into this realm. We've had this joke. Look at you. That's right. Go ahead.
I'm feeling good. I am believing
I'm
the
taking
lie
advantage of it.
Yeah, that spring is here. My spirits are up. But no, we won't leave you hanging. As of the recording of this this podcast, I have 8 raised beds in my front yard, which has been converted full on to a garden. And then I have 8 raised beds in my backyard. And I say as of the recording because I keep on meaning to break ground as a part of our expansion we've been talking about, with a couple of really narrow beds. Now, the important note and the big asterisk, they vary in size. So, I mean, almost none of them are the same size. I mean, I think I have like 2 beds in the front yard that are the same size. That's actually a lie too. Long and short of it, don't think about like a straight line of raised beds. I've configured things to kind of squeeze things into the space I have. So what's that, like 16, 17, 18, going on 17, 18?
I counted 8 in the front, 8 in the back. So that would make 16. That's simple math, but you know my rule, don't do math in public. So
this is true.
There's that. Yeah, and basically my garden looks like an erector set if you've listened to the last episode, and then Miss Batavia's garden looks like a Lego set. So there's that. So we'll go there. Yeah. Especially because I just stepped on a pile of Legos, and all you parents out there know what I'm talking about. Excruciating pain. But look, let's do this. Let's go to the break real quick, and then when we come back, we're going to break down container gardening and different types, ways to handle it, different challenges and benefits, and how it relates to expansion and good candidates. Be right back. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya! We want you to be a part of our gardening community. DM us a picture of your garden at Backyard Gardens TV on Instagram, and we will share it with our listeners.
You know how I know it's getting close to spring? Because your allergies are getting you, aren't they?
No, I don't have allergies. I don't experience allergies. Yeah.
Okay. 4 sneezes and 3 later. I don't have allergies in 10 minutes. Come on, people.
Yeah, I am not going to be the person that grew into allergies. Nope, not me.
Well, that happened to me, but you know what? I fight through it. So look, let's do this. Let's talk about the container garden and just containers in general. What's considered a container garden?
I'd say anything that has a bottom and some type of encasing that allows you to hold soil.
Okay. I like that. So it doesn't have to be a pot from the store. I mean, that's like the key.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So, I started off using 5-gallon buckets, and they were all bright orange because I went to Home Depot, and it was ugly as hell, but it worked. And then I found a can of spray paint, and then I fixed that. But how it pertains to this series that we're talking about is, if you want to, Leonard, rewind time back to 2009 or 10, and I had my first garden, and at the same time I was putting containers on my porch, and that's how I expanded my garden then. before I broke ground on new beds, you know, and stuff like that. So it's a great way to add more growing without the labor of digging, wouldn't you say?
Yep. I agree 120%.
Okay, podcast over. Everybody have a good day.
Yeah, I think that I think last week I mentioned my inability to remember with 100% certainty, but I believe containers for me actually did start off with more like pots that you would traditionally grow flowers in.
Yeah.
Because I've always been a fan of flowers, planting flowers and, you know, caring for flowers. And because I have an eye for, oh, that would look good, you know, and kind of building the aesthetic around my yard, I had a number of pots, you know, and so as I kind of poked around and kind of understood kind of what people were doing in their gardens and how I can improve my garden technique and so on and so forth, you know, I stumbled across container gardening as a thing, right? And you know, hey, if it's dirt that you put in this pot to grow flowers, you can put dirt in this pot to grow food, you know, so.
So you came up with it on your own?
Yeah, I invented container gardening.
Holy crap. We have a celebrity on our hands.
It's something that, you know, sometimes I'm embarrassed by, you know, because there are a lot of people that take credit for it.
Yeah.
And I'm not one to try to steal someone else's thunder or embarrass them. So
yeah.
No, it was an easier transition. All jokes. It was an easier transition because I kind of had that material and because I was using like things like potting soil, which we'll get into some of those things as well. I don't know. This already feels like a part tour. So because we already had like potting soil and things like that, like it was a real easy transition for me to just try to grow food. But to your point, I started off with like a 30-foot by 4-foot space, like in ground for my garden. And at that stage, that was kind of the limit in my mind. Like I didn't want to build out anything else. Like that wasn't where my thought process was.
Yeah.
So in order to grow something different, or in addition to what I was already growing in that one space, it was like, okay, containers made sense to me, you know, so.
Yeah, I was the same way. When I had my first garden, I didn't want to really break ground on anything new. I wanted to eliminate grass that I had to cut, but I didn't care about making another garden. And so that's where the container is really filled in for me. And I remember I had like an eggplant, and then somebody had given me one of those, I don't know exactly the term, but the long skinny pots that you can put like a deck rail. And I put like a couple jalapenos in those. And I was happy just getting a couple jalapenos here and there. The eggplants were prolific as hell, you know, and I didn't know what to do with them at the time. I think I even had a tomato maybe. And then, you know, I had some herbs. Of course I had herbs right there, but I didn't have a whole lot, but it was enough to kind of fulfill that urge. And what it really did is it fulfilled the convenience factor of getting some fresh produce because I had it on my actual porch. So all I had to do was just go outside and grab a couple things. And that was a big deal for me. And it was actually, I think it was like 2 years until I really decided to like, okay, let me make another garden bed. And then when I did that, I think I jumped into making like 2 more. And I think over time, I mean, you have to forgive me, my memory's foggy. But I think I started cutting down on the amount of containers I had. Actually, I know I did because as my bonsai garden grew on my porch, then I had to have more room. And so I kind of started eliminating. And I had more space, but I didn't know what to grow in that space. So that was the other thing, too, is so I could move it into that. But, you know, I'd move like the eggplants from the porch into the actual garden. And that was a big deal. You know what I mean? So I think there's an argument that a container is a good place to test a certain vegetable out in.
Yeah, I still do that to this day. And let me just make one note. So when, you know, kind of I opened up and said for gardeners that wouldn't be able to garden otherwise, I'll actually amend that and say that my garden space for years, again, it's that one space along the fence line where the cage baby currently is, but that's like 30 feet by 4 feet. That was the only dirt that I had in my backyard. Like the rest of my backyard is patio. It was here when I moved in, and porch and deck, right? So there was no other place that I had. Actually, that's my grandfather and I planted collards on the side of my garage one year because that was a space that had dirt. But anywho, so it was, what do you do? This is before the idea of dig up your front yard came up, so whatever I was growing in that 30 foot by 4 foot space and then alongside the garage was kind of it. And I had already started to get bit by the bug. And so, some people don't grow in ground based on soil conditions. And there are a bunch of other different reasons, but for me, that space that I had, it was kind of like, okay, you can grow here, but this is the only space you can grow. Yeah. Right. And so that again leads me to expanding my garden space, my garden footprint. And I did that initially through containers before I ever, in spoiler, you can absolutely put raised beds on concrete and grow on concrete. I actually searched around a lot to see how effective that would be before I actually started building out raised beds.
Mel Bartholomew is an advocate of that.
I don't know that I saw him do that.
Yeah, the square foot garden, that was like one of the big things is like you can put it right on a patio.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you have it.
Yeah, and he kind of gave designs and ideas behind it. So I like how I use that guy's name like we're friends.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, our buddy Mel. And there's so much learning there. So similar to like putting something on a patio and building it up. Like I didn't understand back then how much soil some of these plants really needed to sit in to grow. So I describe it now as like, how deep will these roots go? And so that was a part of what I viewed as a challenge. Like, okay, yeah, I could put something on a patio and, add dirt to it, but how much do I need? And so there's a similar question around the types of containers you use. How big of a container do you need, right? And my immediate answer, if I could ever give anything an answer in one sentence, it would be, it depends on what you're growing.
Yeah. So Miss Batavia got me, it's kind of a serious gift, but a gag gift at the same time. I feel like she got me the Square Foot Gardening, like actual book, which I've never read from cover to cover. Mm-hmm. I want to make a confession. I'm such a garden dork that whenever I go camping, I always take gardening books to read while I'm out camping. So I'm going to be, camping season is starting up, so I'm going to be powering through it. So,
good for you.
Yeah, it is good for me. But yeah, I don't think the roots go as deep as you think. Well, not you think, but like as people think, because when I pull up my plants at the end of the year, they're not going all the way down through the whole bed. So I don't know. I don't really understand why I made my bed so deep. I think I had a misconception maybe. Even my sweet potatoes don't go that deep.
I think, and garden cleanup is one of the best ways to figure that piece out, and so this is, again, one of those things that I learned over time, right? So you buy the little plant or you plant the seed, like everything starts off pretty small. And then at the end of the season, I would pull up my tomato plants and say, wowzer, right? And so in my mind, that was kind of like the bar, like tomato plants, they can have big root systems, everything from spreading to, I don't know, I'm terrible at these kind of measurements, but maybe like 6 or 8 inches or something.
That's about 5 or 6 inches you're holding up. That
my hand is? Yeah. I told you I'm terrible at it. So something in between 5 and 58 inches.
Good night. What a spread.
Yeah, right. But to that point, like that's what made me think, okay, because traditionally I know of gardening, growing food, farming, in just plain old soil. Yeah. So it doesn't matter that the vegetables primarily is what we're talking about will have the space that they need, right? Like this is before we get into like how good is the soil that they're growing in and all that stuff. Like, oh yeah, I have an open garden space, but the soil 5 feet or 5 inches below isn't good. Like, I'm not going to get into all of that. So I absolutely understand how people, because I had that misconception as well, think, oh, you absolutely need all of this space to grow in. For me, for containers, it's less about how much soil you're growing in and more about the more soil you have, the easier it is, which I'm jumping ahead because I'm excited. The easier it is to keep that container watered, right? So the smaller that container, the quicker it will dry out.
And
right?
that's why you need a bigger container. That is the sole reason why you need a big container. And that is my main downfall with that. Not the sole reason, but that's one of the
Primary,
top reasons.
I'd say.
Primary,
I'm out here with all kinds of adjectives, man. Listen, I've been doing this Wordle. I don't know. Have I talked to you about playing Wordle?
No, and don't. We're not having this conversation.
New York Times now owns it, but that's another conversation. So I'm all like, 5-letter words, which that one wasn't. But anywho, here we are.
I can think of a 5-letter word. No, but seriously, watering is like, that's the downfall that I have with it is, where I live, it's hot. And so like, it's really hard to keep these things watered. And I mean, there's times, I would never water my regular garden every day. I wouldn't do it. Yeah. But this one, I'm having to water, if I do the containers every day. And so you talk about, we've talked about container size basically. And I do have to make a statement that I've said in previous podcasts this year that I was going to do grow bags. And I changed my mind because I was talking to Batavia about this. I have 2 big pots that I have in my front yard that they don't do very well there. So I'm going to bring those into my backyard and add them into the corners of the beds and grow additional, like maybe a quick tomato or something like that, just like an in and out kind of crop, and put that in there. And then it's a good thing because not only that, one of the big things too, and so we're talking about how watering is kind of an issue for me. But the other, a benefit on the converse side is I can pick up that pot and move it somewhere else. If I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be able to water it, let me put it in the shade for a couple days. Yeah. I'm going out of town, I can move this. I can move it over to where my sprinkler is going to be hitting or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways to manage this. So it's a great way to expand a garden by not breaking ground. And I mean, I think too, if you do it right, it adds a lot of beauty to your garden as well. I think you can, even if you do, I don't care, you do flowers or whatever, I think it can add a lot to the garden. I could be wrong, but I think it just can, and you have the ability to change it over the years.
Yeah. Let me just do a quick walkthrough, and I'm not going to list all 40 of the containers, but I just want to quickly talk about the types of containers I grow in it. And I plan on doing something like this again. I did this a couple of years ago on YouTube, and I plan on doing it again since I've expanded a bit. But I mentioned 1 gallon. And so some of those are 1 gallon buckets, which almost all of the buckets I grow in are free buckets that I've gotten from grocery stores. A lot of the grocery stores, bakery sections or a bakery. Everyone doesn't give them away, but a lot of spaces in my city will give them to you for free. So I have everything from 1 to 5 gallon. So 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 4 gallon, 5 gallon buckets. They're white buckets. They don't bother me much being white buckets. I know that you mentioned the orange buckets, which I'm not a fan of either. But I also have some more decorative pots that were originally purchased for the purpose of flowers. And they're about 17 gallons and they look really good. They're sexy, man. They're black. They're sleek. They can
nothing
stack
better
up
than a sexy pot. I'm telling you,
man, like no matter what you're growing in, I could just have compost in there, man. That's going to be some sexy compost.
Damn it. I'm ready.
I'm telling you. And then I have a series of different size grow bags. So, actually started off with 20 gallon grow bags. I have 10 gallon grow bags, and I recently invested in 7 gallon grow bags. And then I have your ends and odds. So it's like everything in between, the railings. I have a bunch of those, like those skinny kind of railing, size containers. I get those. And if I purchase it, primarily I'm purchasing it from your home improvement stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, And so I have a bunch of kind of varying sizes of those, which I think primarily are designed for the purpose of flowers. Like that's like who they're marketing to. But I found some great use in them.
Dude, peppers go great in there. Peppers go awesome in those railing pots.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I should have directed this episode because I want to take us to the point of, so there's some of my favorites when it comes to growing. And I'll save that favorite, but I want to, before it leaves me, I want to talk about the biggest lesson that I learned very early on with containers, and that's drainage. Right. So on one hand, we talked about you need to make sure that you're watering these containers, which is crucial. Right. But also, we've said this before. I don't know any plant, herb, or flower that likes to sit in water, day on day. Oh, is it bonsai?
Yeah. Bald cypress. Yeah. Okay. I set them in a tub of water.
So that's a single thing in the world that likes to sit in water, right?
Yeah, there's not much. I mean,
but over the years, I realized after I had kind of soggy roots that a lot of these containers that are meant to be pots and things will come with some drainage holes, but a lot of them aren't big enough to, really support the kind of watering and growing we're doing. And then anything you're repurposing, which container gardenings are so great. Like that's so great for repurposing things. Drainage holes need to be drilled into those. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to give you back the microphone.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about reusing stuff, that's exactly what my container garden is. And I hesitate to call my garden a container garden. It's my containers. But anytime I buy a plant to put in my yard and it comes in that big plastic pot, I keep it. And that's what I use. Or I go to the garden center and they actually recycle them. And I say, hey, man, let me jump in your dumpster. And I go jump in, I'll just pull a couple big pots out or whatever. They're all black. They're nothing fancy, but they definitely do the trick. You know what I mean? And they actually have each one of them. You're going to think I'm dumb for knowing this, but I know this has 5 big drainage holes, 1 in the middle and then 4 on the corners, which is important because that's where the water will pool up in the corner. So I don't have an issue with that, but I know when I had the buckets, I did have an issue, and I got to the point where I actually ended up punching out the bottom of the buckets. And, enter the almighty drill. You know what I mean? Like the drill that's what I use my drill for solely for years, was making drainage holes. I swear it knew nothing but drainage holes. But you're exactly right. I think it is. And a lot of container gardens I see are not like, this is going to come out wrong. I'm just going to say it the way it's in my head or else I'll stutter. It's not a well thought out, like, oh, let me go and purchase these pots for this container garden. A lot of times this is what I can use. Let me use it. And I think it's awesome. Yeah. I think it's great because in a world where everything's plastic, we have a lot of issues with that, and it gets wasted and it fills up our landfills, but you're taking it and you're using it into your garden for a purpose. And I read a book one time. It's funny how things work. This is around the same time I started gardening, and I was on a ship for 20 days, and I took a series of books. I mean, I read a lot of books, and one of them was it was a Christian novel about the end of the world. Kind of, there's like a solar flare and all the power went out. Long story short, everybody was struggling except for this old lady. And they went to her house, and she had in her windowsills and on her porch and everything, she had like Cool Whip containers and all kinds of like trash containers just filled up with dirt and plants that she was growing. And they were like, what are you doing? She was like, you don't waste this stuff. It's given to us. It was a gift. Let's not waste it. Let's reuse it. And then from that moment on, for the next 8 books in the series, they became this flourishing group of people in a world where there was nobody left because they were able to grow food and contain it. And in the wintertime, they could bring it in and do stuff like that. They could cover them and do all kinds of things. So it's very important for me to see that and read that because it's so true. There's a lot of waste, and a container garden will help eliminate that, or at least prolong it. Let me say, because eventually the pot will break down.
Yeah, I'm going to pull myself together because that speaks to two things that I love. Dark Batavia loves post-apocalyptic things, right? And then clearly, everyday Batavia loves gardening.
I'm going to send you the books.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't want to ask on the air.
You're going to read.
Yeah. Oh, listen, now, hold on. Listen.
You can't be nice and then do that.
I let you get away with the whole, no, she's not, she really doesn't use meth, right? Like I feel like this is like character assassination or something. And now oh, you're going to read, because I'm actually listening to an audiobook. So maybe there is some truth to that. Anyway.
I'll send you the audiobook then if that helps.
Yeah. So this is a couple of notes here. This is the way I live. I save a lot of things because I believe most everything can be repurposed. I feel great about it until I'm stepping over shit, so there is that piece of it. But for so many years, I bought everything in my garden that was planted, flowers and food, vegetables and herbs and things from someplace. Right. And they're not giving that stuff to you, putting a pile of dirt in a plant in your hand. Right. They come in containers of varying sizes. And so this is a great tip if you have the space and the discipline to not just make it like this shit show of like crap everywhere. There's so many things that and kind of off topic, but connected, even with seed starting, there are a lot of containers that I clean up, that I bought whatever the plant was, that I plant it and clean it up, and then I save that container and I'll use it in my seed starting. But they're also, especially for some of your larger flowers, there are a lot of containers that can be repurposed and you can grow food in them, so I know it gets kind of like, like kitschy, like, there's, how you have gardens with like trinkets everywhere. Like I try to be careful of that when it comes to the design. You just don't want all of this random crap. But at the end of the day, if your primary goal is to grow food, there are all kinds of ways that you can get that started or keep that going.
Yeah.
So think perennial flowers. They're giving you 1 gallon containers easily. My favorite hibiscus. Anytime I bought those, 1 gallon, 2 gallons, you pay an arm and a leg for the plant. Luckily it's beautiful, but why not keep that container if you can, and use that. I planted mustards in those size containers last year.
Yeah, I reuse containers, especially the ones that you get when you buy plants and stuff. I have those everywhere. And when I do my annual seedling sale, I will I've had problems with people contact me and they're like, did you grow these or are these from the company? I'm like, no, I'm just reusing the pot, man. Like there's no point in wasting it. Like come get it. You know what I mean? Yep. So I definitely do that when I'm potting things up for sure. Because those are great sizes. Because think about it again. If you buy a pepper plant from the store, when it's time for me to pot up my pepper plants, it's going to be in that same size container. So right. Yeah, and I definitely have bought some containers too, but I continue to save them. And I have a shelf in my shed that is nothing but old containers stacked up. And I use them all the time.
3 times real fast.
No, there's no way I can get it out 3 times. I can't even get it out another time. But, when we got way off topic, of course, but it's kind of the benefit of, the reusing stuff is one of the benefits of the container garden. And then I think it's the biggest benefit, really, in the grand scheme of things, but the versatility of it, too. We kind of alluded to being able to move them around and stuff like that and place them in different areas. I mean, have you ever looked at somewhere in your space and been like, you know what, a tomato would look really good there. It would be a nice bush for right now. It'd be functional, but you can't really get it there. And that's when the container would help because then you can just put it there. You know what I mean? And it goes the same with testing out waters too.
I've never looked at it like that. But after I've put something there, I'm like, oh, okay. I like how that's growing. Oh, that's convenient. I absolutely use some of my containers for testing. Like there's some of the newer crops. I will start with them in containers to see if I can be successful with containers, because I still look at, and I know, don't come for me, but I still look at the raised beds as my primary growing space. Right. So that's the best that I have. And so if I can grow some things in containers and they can be successful, then I can save this other growing space for other things that have different needs. Like I don't have to worry about watering my tomato plant that's in ground or in a raised bed every day. Right. But if I'm successful with growing them in a container, then hey, I could even give some of that soil a rest from growing tomatoes. So there are definitely a bunch of different benefits. And I like the way you say without breaking ground. Like you don't need to break ground.
No.
To grow food, to have containers.
No, you don't. And I mean, people in apartments, they can grow on porches just like I did. You can grow them, balconies, patios, a lot of spaces. I mean, look, my man on that movie Waterworld, he grew a tomato plant on a damn boat and purified his piss so he could water it. Hashtag just saying. So, I mean, it's definitely been shown. And that movie, by the way, is true facts. So anybody who says it's bad is just terrible. But made me lose my train of thought. So this goes really well with the vertical gardening episode that we did last week. And if you haven't listened to that, you should go all the way to the end of this one and then go back. But containers can really fit in perfect because not only are, we talked a little bit about like upside down tomatoes and stuff like that, but hanging pots, hanging them up so they don't even have to be on the ground at all. Hang them from a tree if you have to. Hang them, do all kinds of things. I mean, I got last year I went and got a 4x4 and stuck it in the ground. I spent $20 on it and I have 3 hanging pots on it. And I could continue to go down more and more if I wanted. So, it's another good way to, really expand. And at that point, I'm going to go on record and just say, if you're growing in a pot in the air, you're growing vertically, no matter what it is. It's got to be vertical, right? Just say yes. Just agree with me. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. You're such a good friend.
Yeah, of course I am. There is, I've wanted to grow herbs and,
should have started with those. You should have started with those.
Yeah. Forever debate there. So I wanted to grow herbs in a couple of round raised beds. They're actually fire pits, 36 inches around in the front yard. But I found last year that having herbs right outside my door in a container were so convenient. It helped me keep track of and use them so much more. I mean, the general rule is the closer that the garden is to your home, the better. And sometimes that even means like stepping outside your door versus 20 feet away from your door. And so I've basically said, I can actually just, with the containers that I have, plant my herb garden right here outside of my door. And it's nice because I don't have to worry about frying them. I don't have to worry about that set of containers drying out too fast because it gets like maybe morning sun, but basically afternoon shade, which goes back to the idea of how often or how infrequently or how frequently I want to water. However, for those that really do need watering, it's right outside my door. It's going to be the first thing that I see when I do my garden walk. So, yeah.
I was waiting for something else and you stopped. So
it's a classic Batavia of like, it's not mid-sentence. I'm basically done with the thought that was, formulating as I said it. Yeah.
Yeah. In thought. No, it's when you plant when you plant close to the house, you're exactly right. You will use it more. You will tend to it more. You'll be able to take care of it and keep an eye on it. And a lot of times some people people don't have dirt right next to their door. So that, the containers then lend that spot. And I think that's really what we need to take away from, or what I need to take away from it, and I hope other people do, is it's about bringing the food closer to you, putting it in places in which you may not be able to grow, so that you can be more mindful of what you're doing and growing it. And I mean, let's be honest, if I have a basil next to my back porch and I have a basil out in my garden, the basil out in my garden is going to bolt and be full of flowers and be bitter. The basil by my porch is going to be nice and trimmed and bushy. And that's just cold, hard facts. Yep. So, and I don't mind if it's a little bit bitter, whatever, but truth be told, I would rather not have the bitter basil. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I just came up with an idea in my head. So
get it out,
when
let's hear
it.
Let's hear it.
Versus an idea that would have come from some other place besides my head. So I was thinking about this corner of my back porch. I've put all kinds of different flowers there over the years. And it's just, remember how you said earlier, it doesn't have to be an ugly space. You can look and say, oh, that would look good there. I really like the look of it. It makes me happy. Walking out of the door, looking out of the window. And so the idea was what I want to do is build like a little shelf that's a little bit higher, because otherwise I have to use like plant stands. So they're not on the ground. I like them more like, chest level. But the second idea was I can just put my grow bags, my smaller grow bags right there. I had basil and lemon balm in a container right outside of the door. And it's exactly what you said. I use that much more often than I had a mixture of herbs further into the backyard lined up with some other grow bags. And I didn't really even get to those herbs until the weather started to cool off, and they struggled all summer, like in the heat of the summer. And so it's in my mind, I'm saying I probably need to bring all of those things closer to me. But the asterisk is I can still interplant flowers if I want. I can still put a container that has flowers in, right? Like everything doesn't have to be one straight thing. It doesn't have to be all herbs. It doesn't have to be all flowers. It doesn't have to be all vegetables. And I think that container gardening, it's just like if you're doing a raised bed, you can play around with that, Well,
last year I have that big container by my greenhouse. Last year I put 5 pepper plants in it, 1 marigold, 1 pinwheel petunia, and a baby's breath in there. And it was pretty until it got overgrown and crazy, and then it wasn't pretty, but that's a different story. We won't really rehash that. But it was pretty, you know what I mean? And it allowed me to do something like that, and it allowed me to be a little bit more creative in my space versus in my raised beds where I'm like, look, space is a premium. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get 1 flower, and then that's all you're going to get. So it was definitely, I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to doing that again. And if I did I've kind of played around with the thought of changing my system for my herb garden. And if I do that, I may actually move that into giant pots as well and do something like that where it's just more butamus and, something more pleasing to the eye. I'm not sold on what I'm doing yet, and I may not even be sold this year because I'm running out of time quick. But I did one. Here's another way I used a container before. I grew chamomile for a long time, and I read very early on that it can be almost invasive because of the way it drops its flowers and everything. So I put it on the corner of my bed in a 1-gallon pot. And then I never had issues with it. And I got tea for years and years out of it, and I was able to take care of it. So that was another benefit of that too, is like you have a plant that could be invasive, like mint or something like that. You can put it into a pot and isolate it that way, at least so you can keep the roots from going into the ground and spreading that way. Or you can move it away in case it drops seeds or something like that.
That's a huge tip, a huge tip. I vowed not to grow mint in a garden bed or garden space unless it's in a container because of how invasive it is. And I think I've seen you do this as well. I've done this depending on the year, taking a pot a container of some sort and actually kind of buried it almost into the garden. I did this with some flowers originally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to keep it really real with you. It was because a couple of my flower pots had walked off of my porch. And so I figured if I bury these bitches, someone's going to have to work to get this. And it wasn't obvious to the eye. But I say that, from a gardening perspective, you can do that. And it could help when it comes to, if you have the space, it can help when it comes to your watering needs. One thing about, again, I go back to the containers. The reason why I like to group my containers, and I've come to this decision over the years, one, I like the look of them, but two, it allows me to be more disciplined when it comes to watering them.
Yeah.
So I've had over the years containers everywhere in my space. And the further they are apart, it may look good, but the further they are apart, the more taxing it is on the gardener to keep up, especially if you're talking about, even if you have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 containers, like that's still something to keep up with. So that's something I try to do. And I envision that as soon as you put together, what's the rule of 3 for landscaping and gardening and all? As soon as you put 3 of something together, I call it a garden.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, and so just for the record, I want to get this out before we go on too far. We waited till late in the show, but use container soil and amend it as needed. And I actually mulch mine too. I'll put a mat of, let me say it correctly, wheat straw. Okay, It's not hay; it's wheat straw. So I use that and top this to help with the moisture and stuff like that. And then I use it and it stays on the wintertime. It'll help it'll help temperature fluctuations, and it'll break down and add to the soil over time. But you really want to make sure you're using the correct soil because it's made, and you could make your own by just adding peat sphagnum moss in if you wanted, but this is already pre-made for you. So it's a lot easier now as the prices go up, which they are. I'm here to tell you a bag of soil is not cheap. Then maybe you should experiment. And then I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I would do is I would go heavier on the peat sphagnum moss, heavy on the compost, and then just some regular soil with it. And then that'll help. But you definitely want to make sure you're using the correct stuff because it will hold moisture better and makes a huge difference. And fertilize pretty good.
Yeah, I for years have bought potting soil, potting mix. For me, they're the same, but it's hella expensive, right? And the more you grow in containers, the more some type of growing medium you need. So I do 2 things, what you described. So I use peat moss because I've bought like 2 big bags of it. An alternative is cocoa coir, which is supposed to be a more sustainable version of it. I'm going to finish off my peat moss, and I mix in peat moss, sometimes some regular, soil, depending on kind of what kind of container I'm growing in, some compost, just a bit of it. And I absolutely, similar to you, mulch those containers, to try to retain some of that moisture. I absolutely reuse spent potting soil. So, so there are nutrients in the soil you buy when you buy potting soil and potting mix, right? But you're not going to, that's going to be used up once you get out throughout the season. So to your point, I probably focused on fertilizing my containers first when I decided to bite the bullet and, get into fertilizing, because I knew that those plants were going to be, challenged, right? And think about, you're also watering some of that kind of plant food out of it too when you're watering. I think the other thing,
right, and conversely, it can build up the salts from it too because of the way it is. So it is nice. It is important to find a balance. Yeah.
One last note regarding soil. If I have a huge container, like, for me, like 15, 20 plus 30 gallons, something like that. I absolutely, because again, we talked about very early on, a lot of these plants don't need a lot of growing space. So something that has more shallow roots even, or your general plant, probably anything that's, your peppers, your lettuces, your herbs and things like that don't have huge root systems. If I'm putting them in a huge pot, if that's the decision I've made, I'll put spent potting soil at the bottom, meaning that, I used it last year, grew in it, and then I'm not adding much to it, but I just need some filler, so right. I do that as well.
That's what Batavia does for her soil, everybody.
End sentence.
End sentence. And then begin recipe of the day. This episode is proudly sponsored by The Garden We Share from North South Books. It's an inspiring new picture book written by Zoe Tucker and illustrated by Juliana Swaney, the #1 New York Times best-selling illustrator of We Are the Gardeners by Joanna Gaines. This beautiful book celebrates the friendship between a young girl and an elderly woman as they plant seeds in a community garden alongside friends and neighbors, waiting for the seeds to flower. A great gift for all ages, on sale spring 2022 at a bookstore near you or online. Please visit northsouth.com for more information. To everything, there is a season in this beautiful book about treasured memories in gardening.
Ben, what question do we get asked the most?
I would have to say it's probably more something like, what are the products we use in our gardens the most?
Ding, 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 ding. That's the correct answer. Hey, there's an Amazon link below.
When you get over to the Amazon store, know that you're going to be supporting the podcast, but all of the products both Batavia and I have used in our gardens. We want to see you all over on YouTube, so check us out at Backyard Gardens TV to watch our podcasts and other gardening videos.
All right, so I need you all to try this with me, and I need you to not turn your noses up. So this is a pea soup, right? I know.
Dude, you're a freak. I just ate that for dinner last night.
Get out of the way. Look, so this is three strikes now, with you a name calling. We'll have to talk after class.
I didn't call you a name. Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. So this is kind of in the spirit of kind of spring, and you'll be harvesting some of your peas soon. I'm going to go with, we're going to heat a medium pot, medium heat, 4, 5, 6 quarts, whatever the sizes you normally cook in. We're going to add some scallions that are chopped up. We're going to add some tarragon or basil, which we may not have in our gardens yet, but you could purchase it too. We're going to stir that up until it's soft, 3 or 4 minutes. Now you're going to use your peas, and it could be fresh or frozen. You're going to need about 3 cups of peas though. And these are your sweet peas is what I'm talking about, which your face, I knew like I had a winter chicken dinner. And I'd love to hear your adjustments here too, since you just recently had it. All right. So we're going to add the peas in, stir for about a minute. We're going to use vegetable broth. This is full vegetable soup here. So we're going to use vegetable broth, about 3 cups, right? To give it a little bit of like going power. We want this to stretch out, right? So from there, we're going to bring the broth and mixture up to a boil, and we're going to let it then simmer. After it comes up to a boil, turn the heat down, let it simmer for 3 or 4 minutes. Now, the thing about this is it's going to be a smooth soup, right? So it's okay. You're not overcooking things. We're going to take the soup off of the stove. We're going to put this into either a blender, or if you have one of those immersion blenders, you want to basically smooth this thing out. So you're going to blend it up either way. And then you're going to put it back on the stove. This is where you're going to add some lemon juice. I just love adding lemon juice to foods. All right. So we're going to add a couple of tablespoons of lemon juice. This is where you season the way that you want, salt and pepper. You can put some garlic powder in there if you want, whatever the taste you're looking for. That's where you can do that. I prefer this. I've had pea soup before. I've not used this recipe, but I prefer it warm. But this is something obviously you could actually eat cold. And then either use sour cream or yogurt if you want to top it with just a dollop of it. This is a way that you can use either last year's pea harvest or what you're getting out of the garden this year, or you can buy them. I'm going to add some maybe French bread, a little bit of butter on it on the side, or garlic bread because I have that in the freezer. And I'm going to enjoy pea soup, folks.
So the only thing I would do different is I don't like mine blended. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I take a potato masher and I just mash them up. And when they release the starches, I let it cook and it'll thicken up a little bit. Mm-hmm. So that's the only thing I would do different. I just don't like mine like baby food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's the reason I was like, stay with me. Because the idea of like green peas and like, yeah, I get how that could be baby soup-ish.
Yeah, we did that with butternut squash and stuff. So in my house, I'm the soup master, so I make a lot of soups. And last night we had pea soup. You're so weird.
That's crazy.
I know that you're either spying on me or we just know each other that well to where you know what I'm eating now, and it freaks me out just a little bit.
Well, I can't believe that the cameras are still active and they haven't been found. So.
But no, it's perfect timing too, because everybody should be if you listen to this show and you're not planting peas, what are you doing with yourself? I mean, really? No.
No, what are you doing with yourself? Did we ever, we've not declared you got to grow this year.
No.
I think we should declare you got to grow. We've done you grow this series is one of our favorite series for our mini-sodes. Yeah. All right. You should grow. You're really trying to chip into spring Batavia. Just coined it.
You have so many phases of Batavia. I get confused. We have New Year Batavia. Man. We have spring Batavia. We have I'm done with summer Batavia. We have the fall, the uplifting fall Batavia, the winter sadness Batavia.
Yeah.
What else do we have? I think that's it, right?
Yeah. Personally, there's that winter sadness is separate from holiday. Oh, Batavia.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just Ben.
It's okay though. It's okay.
It
like I think I know the people that I know. I'm friends with the people that I'm friends because no one really gets the same Batavia. Right.
Yeah.
Not many people, let me say that.
Yeah, that's true. It keeps us on our toes. Mm-hmm. And all the listeners are on their toes too. But no, it's a solid recipe. And tarragon, I don't know how I feel about it yet. It's one of those herbs.
I'm not sure how I feel about it either.
Yeah. I think it's a savory spice, I believe. So I'd probably use that over basil, though, I would think. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I probably would use basil, I think. But I was watching this, again, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, like everyone has a cooking show, a cooking channel, a cooking page. And so this guy I used to watch, and I see him come up in my feed from time to time, and he's doing this thing like it's some paid service, like kind of like a take on masterclass. But in the introduction, so I've not signed up for it or anything, but in the introduction, he said something like, people oftentimes, if they don't have ingredients that a recipe calls for, they toss the recipe. And a part of that comes from us not necessarily understanding what we get from a particular herb, so the flavor or the texture or the filling that spice gives you or that herb gives you or whatever have you, like that allows you to make adjustments. I was actually in a different part of my life talking to some folks, and she said that the way that her mother taught her and her sisters to cook was you should be able to taste the recipe once you read it. Right. So, and that never occurred to me. Like once you read the ingredients of a recipe, you should know what it tastes like. You should actually be able to taste it. And so that allows you to make adjustments as you cook. And that allows you to go freeform on that recipe if you want to change some things out. Right.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes I would default to basil because I'm more familiar with that, but maybe I will try it with tarragon because who knows?
Well, one of the things I've learned in my years, and this goes back to when we were full out vegan, there were so many spices that you had to have in order to create foods. So we thought, and you couldn't keep up with it. So we ended up doing, and it's a simple Google search is what can I use instead of this, that, or the other. And I learned that, and this ties in directly with gardening, a lot of them are interchangeable and the flavor profiles are so similar that you don't have to have this all expansive herb garden in order to cover it. You can have your basics would be oregano, thyme, basil, and I mean, that really covers your basis for all of this stuff. So, if you don't have thyme, you can use oregano, or if you need parsley, you can use oregano or thyme. There's all these different things that, it's like if you don't have dried mustard, which a lot of recipes would call for, you can just use regular mustard. You know, plain old fashioned French's mustard, you know what I'm saying? Or if you're like me, you buy the generic, so you can do that. But there's all these different ways you can do it. So I learned that, and then it made me, for my gardening, a lot better, because then I could focus on just certain herbs instead of going this like all expansive. I do want to grow bay leaves, though. I have yet to grow those, and I do want to grow those because we cook a lot of soups.
Yeah, and they're expensive too. It's on my longer unofficial list as well. There's just so many opportunities. Maybe
this year. I do have to buy some herbs and different tea flowers and stuff for this year. So maybe I'll buy bay leaves this year. Because I'm tired of buying them and them being all crushed up. When you want me to put one bay leaf in, don't give me a container that's all crushed up and powder. I don't want that. And then you have to fish it out. It's kind of like it's in 18 pieces. Yeah, I'm exaggerating a little bit there. You're not really. It's pretty bad. All right, everybody. I hope truly that if you're trying to expand... Nope. We got to go long because you have to give candidates your favorite things to grow in containers. Yeah. My bad. I like tomatoes and eggplants and peppers. Those are my favorites to put in pots. So peppers, absolute hands down, number one pick. For me, in containers. Lettuce, because I'm kind of prissy. I like clean lettuce, and it's much cleaner in containers for me than it has been kind of growing it in ground or, in beds. And I'm going to shout out to you, although you've been away with me this episode. I'm going to say herbs. Herbs? Yeah. The whole lot of herbs. Didn't you do this to me earlier this season? Don't narrow it down whatsoever. Yeah, that's definitely a page out of my book. Yeah, and I think if you go with something that's not, like, I don't think corn would do very good. I think people do it, but I don't think that it works the best. I tried it last year, and it was a bomb. Yeah, and then like melons and stuff, I mean, it works, but the size of the roots isn't the problem, it's the vines, so I feel like those aren't very good candidates. You? I would agree that they're not the best candidates. I would actually add cucumbers, similarly vines. I think that all of those can be grown in containers, but you have to be very intentional, very planful. You have to keep your eye on those things. You have to fertilize. You have to make sure the water is proper. Like, they aren't as forgiving as some other plants that you would grow in containers. Yeah. Now, you can add a trellis to a pot, so there is that. That is not the issue. Interesting thought. Maybe I should do that this year. This is what I need, one more trellis. But, and I think too, huge asterisk, varieties. Check different varieties. You have bushing varieties. You have container varieties for a lot of things. You have smaller fruits for some stuff. So there is a lot of options out there for your containers. And it turns out that a lot of stuff I put in my garden are container varieties, which doesn't make any sense, but that's okay. Some of that's a little bit of that's marketing. One of the cherry tomatoes I'm growing again this year, if it gets out of the grow room, it's a patio variety of a cherry tomato. So the plant is just meant to get smaller than you would like your 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet tall cherry tomato plant would. That's a good thing. How many cherry tomatoes do you really need? Every year I think about, but every year it's the first tomato. I love them. And then it gets into end of summer Batavia. I'm just like, enough. Yeah. My wife told me last year, she goes, why in the hell would you take cherry tomatoes and trade them with somebody else for more cherry tomatoes? And I was like, well, ours are yellow and theirs are red. She's like, I don't give a shit what they are. Stop. Just get rid of them. Yes, ma'am. So that was my tongue lashing for the year in the garden. It was pretty brutal too, but that's all right. There's nothing better though than a cherry tomato. You're never going to get a tomato that's sweeter than a cherry tomato. And pick any variety really. But a lot of them put on a lot of fruit. Like yeah. She's limited me to one cherry tomato plant in the garden each year, woman. Which I can respect that. So there's your candidates. So everybody, now we've gone a little bit long, but that's okay. If you want to expand your garden, container gardens are great. It's a great way to test. It's a great way to move things around, challenges or watering. Stay on top of your fertilizing. Be creative. Add flowers to your pots and enjoy them. Thank you so much for being part of the show and listening. And we may end up adjusting the schedule for next week. I have to run it by Miss Batavia. I had an idea during the show. So stay tuned. We may be continuing the Expand Your Garden series. Maybe. No promises. But we love you guys. Thank you so much. Check the links below. Become a patron. Buy a shirt, mug, coffee cup, fanny pack, whatever you want. It's there. Thank you. BYG Spring, 25% off until June 20th.
See ya!
We hope you enjoyed today's show. Please follow us on YouTube at Backyard Gardens TV.
Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV. Over on our website, backyardgardenstv.com. And then we have Patreon at Backyard Gardens.
And don't forget to check out our links below to help the show. Thank you so much for joining us as we learn to grow and grow for change. Cut.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya.
If you guys want some Backyard Gardens gear,
go to the link below and check out our t-shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and other gear.
All purchases go towards helping to support the show, so thank you so much in advance, and we hope you enjoy. We want everybody to have a garden, and we're going to give you a chance to win free seeds every month.
Head over to backyardgardenstv.com and enter your email address to be entered in all of our giveaways.
Good luck.
We want you to be a part of our gardening community. DM us a picture of your garden at Backyard Gardens TV on Instagram, and we will share it with our listeners.